Welcome to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, recorded live at the DEMA Convention in Orlando, Florida in September 2018. I am your host, Donna Shannon. As a professional career coach, I help people navigate the hiring maze to get the jobs they really love. In addition to working with job seekers one-on-one, I do have a book available. You can find How to Get a Job Without Going Crazy on Amazon. I have a very special guest today, is Bonnie Low-Kramen, and I'll let her introduce herself in just a moment, but you're definitely in for a treat. She has worked as a celebrity personal assistant and now teaches seminars for executive personal assistants and personal assistants across the world, so we're really lucky to have her here today. So overall, our show's purpose is to explore and redefine the world of work, especially as Gen X and millennials and those to come after seek positions of leadership that still allow them to be themselves. So every show we will explore a topic related to business or job searching, and of course, we're going to talk about tattoos. Our sponsor is the Personal Touch Career Services, Denver's top-rated career coaches. We focus on the practical tools for your job search, including resumes, LinkedIn profiles, job search coaching, and ongoing classes. You can check out our ridiculously long website, personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com, or you can just Google it. Hi, Bonnie.
Hey, Donna. I love the articulation of all those syllables. That was perfect.
Well, it's called the website is too damn long.
If only you'd known then what you know now.
I know. There was even a marketing specialist that helped me come up with that. Anyways, sometimes the pros don't know best.
Oh, whatever.
But you know best, and you are a pro. So, Bonnie, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about you?
Oh, my gosh. I am a Jersey girl. 2 years ago, Robert and I moved to Florida, though. Graduated from Rutgers University, and I just fell into my work. I was a theater and English major, and my driver was that I wanted to be in show business. I just needed to be in show business. I started out being an actress it lasted for literally 3 months, but it felt like 5 minutes, and while acting wasn't for me, I knew that I had to be involved with show business. So my first job out of college really was being in a theater box office, making $4.25 an hour, and being thrilled to have the job because I got to interact with the actors and director and producers, and that fed me that I was really good at that, at the orchestrating of the behind-the-scenes administration, and I got to, really flex those organizational muscles. I became the go-to person, even in our little box office operation, and that felt great. So, at each step of the way, I followed instincts, is what I did. My poor mother, she worried that I wouldn't be able to make a living in show business, but I felt sure that I would. I didn't exactly know how, but I did it.
Right, and so you actually became what's known as a celebrity personal assistant, and you were working with Olympia Dukakis. So what was it like to work with Olympia?
Yeah, I began working with Olympia 10 months before she became a household name.
Yeah.
So my story is really about timing and luck and being in the right place at the right time. I went to work for Olympia at a time when no one knew who Olympia Dukakis was except people in the New York theater scene who knew that she was a very respected theater actress. And I respected that. I mean, I love theater. Theater's in my blood, being a theater and English major at college. And so what we found, I was the PR and marketing director at her theater in northern New Jersey, and she was one of the strongest women I'd ever worked with. And she is Greek, everybody knows that. One of the brightest women I've ever met, and I so enjoyed working with her. And in those first 10 months, we got to work with each other like you and I would work with each other, Donna. Like in relative anonymity. It would be like, all right, Bonnie, Olympia, how are we going to put bodies in these seats for the plays we're choosing? It wasn't that there weren't paparazzi hanging out, let's just say that. And then 10 months in, she came to me because she got cast in Moonstruck. And mainly what she needed to tell me was that she was going away for a month to Canada to shoot that movie. And while she was gone, she needed someone she trusted to be kind of communication central while she was gone, to be the conduit through which everybody on staff at the theater would communicate with her, because she couldn't have 20 people calling her every day.
Right, and this is in the days before cell phones or...
Yes, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I know we're dating ourselves. We do remember life before cell phones and before computers and before we had fax machines even inside our houses. And for those of you listening, I know some of you do remember life before computers, but for those of you who don't, life did happen.
Yeah, she didn't even have a laptop.
No, I didn't even have a laptop during this. It was just crazy. I had, my idea of high tech, where maybe some of you, and maybe you know, Donna, I had an answering machine at home where there was a little device that when I was remote, I could hold it up to the phone and it would make a tone.
Yep.
And it would rewind the tape.
Yep.
So you could listen to your messages.
Yeah, so it was like, for those of you who don't know, it was a physical cassette, so it wasn't the same as calling into your voicemail and putting in a tone, punching in your code to get it.
I mean, this
different.
speaks to the learning curve, the tremendous learning curve that exists for assistants in the world today who, remember life in the 90s. But Olympia became famous very quickly. Moonstruck, the buzz on Moonstruck was very fast. That she made that movie in Canada, and instantly there was publicity that she was going to get nominated. And Norman Jewison, who directed the film, said, I know you're going to get a nomination because this performance is that good, and I think you can win, but in order to win, my advice is to do every piece of publicity that comes along.
Yeah.
And that meant me, because I was doing publicity.
Right.
So that decision, so she said, all right, I trust Norman Jewison, and I think I would like to try to win. That meant that she and I were connected 10 hours a day next to each other, because I was coordinating all of these interviews. This fame changed all of our lives. Olympia followed that movie up with Steel Magnolias and then Mr. Holland's Opus. So she had one hit right after another, and that meant the phone never stopped ringing. That meant, neither one of us dared to think how long this relationship would last. She had a need, which is how it happens with celebrities and any high-powered person. Because our given is we only get 24 hours in a day.
Right.
So that's it. So it's how many things are you trying to fit into that time period. It was by instinct that I jumped in to serve this need that Olympia had. My instinct was, Donna, that my role was to do everything that Olympia didn't have to do. Meaning, Olympia got to do the things only Olympia could do.
Right.
So in my head, that meant only she could memorize her lines.
Yeah.
Only she could go for her costume fitting. Only she could go for her doctor's appointments. That kind of thing. And so that was my criteria, and she was, my goodness, on the spectrum, I called her the queen of the delegators. If you've got somebody who's a micromanager, she was the complete antithesis of that. Olympia gave me a very long runway and leeway. I opened every piece of mail. I could answer every phone call. There were very few boundaries about the places I couldn't go.
Right.
So I was invited to the table to sit in on meetings. So very early on, there's language that we're using now in 2018 that we were using then, but it was considered really unusual. Things like, I was her strategic business partner. She wanted me to be at the table. She welcomed my opinion. She didn't always do what I said, and she didn't always agree with me, but she wanted to know what I thought. She seemed to I think it's because she came from theater, which is so collaborative. She really knew that to hire people around you means more than just having them do the job description. It also means caring what they're thinking and really interested in knowing what they're thinking. Because Olympia knew, for example, that people were saying things to me that they would never say to her.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right.
That happens in that happens just in the workplace. You know, people don't say things to the principal, the CEO, the head person, whatever. And she used that. You know, she would then, when we would get alone, she'd say, all right, so what are they saying?
Yeah.
And so many executives don't really leverage their people in that kind of way. But it's so true. It was true then, and it's true now. Yeah. So she's so bright, and, you know, we're still friends. I left 7 years ago. But she is incredibly talented, insightful person who was my mentor. She was my teacher. She was my friend, and the best news of all is she still is all those things.
So what do you think are some of like the really big challenges or triumphs during that time? Because you worked with her for a total of 25 years, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So you started when you were 5.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't believe these are big numbers. These are big, scary numbers. One of the biggest challenges, of course, was technology. You know, that we went from doing everything manually to doing everything digitally, and she remained low tech. Yeah. So my learning curve was off the charts all the time. Plus, my background was in theater, so my learning curve was also about learning the vocabulary of television and film. So it was learning an industry. I mean, it was all show business, but I was learning the vocabulary of those industries, in addition to playing catch up on technology and trying to keep up on the latest and greatest. But then in addition, I wasn't only working with Olympia. I was working with her husband, the amazing Louis Zorich. I was working with her 3 children, you know, who were teenagers at the time when I first started, and her mother, who passed at the age of 92. And so I straddled the world of private service and executive assistant, because I was doing a lot of contractual things and business things, and then also caregiver, because I also had involvement with her kids and her mom and, you know, the nursing home. And, you know, so when these issues come up at DEMA or at, you know, in the world that I'm moving in, it seems like my life, my experience has touched one of these areas that inevitably come up.
Right, and then you had your own life. You have your own kids. You have your own husband.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah, well, that was part of the challenge. I was married for 27 years and divorced. So this business can be tough on relationships.
Yeah.
The fame part of my work with Olympia didn't happen until I was married for some years, and so there was conflict over that without getting into the gory details. I have a wonderful son, Adam, who's now 30, and however, I don't know too many assistants. I know 2 who have more than one child. They have 2 kids. Most celebrity assistants either don't have any children or only have one, because it is a profession that is so demanding, and it rarely enables a person to employ a nanny on top of that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I know you don't work with Olympia anymore, so when did you know it was time to leave?
I left in 2011, but truth be told, I had started thinking about it a couple of years prior. My mom passed at the age of 89 in 2009. That had something to do with it. There's something clicked then. But also, Donna, what happened was that my book, Be the Ultimate Assistant, had its first edition in 2004. And so by the time 2009 came around, and we had this beautiful thing called the internet, I had been in a part-time way doing teaching and speaking and hearing from assistants all over the world. I mean, the internet enabled me to hear from personal assistants, executive assistants in places like Singapore and Malaysia. And, you know, I knew that my experience with Olympia was absolutely relatable for assistants in New York and LA. what I totally didn't know until the internet and people started reading my book all over the world, and Amazon, to sell my book, was how this material for assistants related to assistants in Ohio or, Spain. And there really wasn't even a language barrier because English is the international language.
Right.
It was mind-blowing. So between the years of 2004 and 2009, I became clearer and clearer of what I thought was true was really true. And that was that there was such a need, that I felt the need for training and education as an assistant. And wow, was I hearing from assistants who were telling me exactly the same thing. So by the time 2009 came around, I thought, I found myself, Donna, feeling much more excited about the training of assistants and my book and like dreaming up a class that I wanted to teach versus working on one more movie, working on one more television show. And I think I started waking up each day and kind of dreading going. I love Olympia, love her to death, didn't love the work, didn't have the passion for the work that I used to.
And that's what makes all the difference.
Yeah, I recognized that. I had to recognize that in myself.
Yeah. And then that really brings us into like the next phase of your career. Now, it's not something new for you to be supportive to other, PAs and executive assistants and executive personal assistants. So, correct me if I'm wrong about this. So you were the co-founder of New York Celebrity Assistants, and that was way back in '96?
Yeah. I was one of 8 celebrity assistants. I got this notice in the mail. It was not my idea, but Morgan Freeman's assistant was the first president of the organization, and she was pulling together a group of celebrity assistants in New York City. My son was 7 at the time, 7 years old, and I received this notice in the mail, and it was like a huge light bulb went on in my head. And to bring to this work can feel so lonely and so isolating. And when I saw that there was going to be a meeting at the Ritz-Carlton in New York City of celebrity assistants, there was nothing that was going to keep me away. Like my strongest instinct, I have to say there were certain decisions in my career, Donna, that were like beacons in the ethos or something, and this was one of them. I knew I had to be a part of this organization. I knew it. And I went, and within a few months I was the president, and we started with 8 people, like Caroline Kennedy's assistant and Harry Belafonte's assistant and Marlo Thomas's. And within a year, we were probably at 24. And now, 22 years in, it's, I think we're in the 170 neighborhood.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. I mean, not many organizations last that long, right?
Right. And for those listeners that we have that may not understand the whole thing with private service, there really is an entire world that's going on of people who support those, high net worth, ultra high net worth, celebrities, high profile persons. And sometimes there's that whole mystery of how do you break into it. And even if you're in it, you feel like you're the only person in the world doing it.
Oh my gosh, it is such a weird alien of a job. And for so long, I felt like an alien because I was, taking work home at nights and working on the weekends and coming in to do parties and sometimes sleeping at Olympia's house if there was going to be a snowstorm and we were flying somewhere. Like nobody I knew was working the way I was working, but in my head, it was all about filling a need. She had a need to do the work she was doing, and she was running so fast going from one project to another. It just was so obvious to me, the need for a personal assistant. I knew she needed me. There was no question about it. I was not a luxury. I was not a nice to have. I was a had to have.
Yeah.
Like, it's no wonder that publicists and managers get crazy with assistants, because when things start falling through the cracks, that can get really expensive.
Yeah, it does. Having just now I only have like part-time assistants and stuff like that, and having ones, I had one assistant that was really bad. And
oh dear.
Yeah, it was painful. It was bad. You can't even imagine when it's like I just need the little things done and it's not getting done, it's like, okay, it costs my assistant, $18 an hour to pay him. If I'm doing it, that's $125 an hour, baby.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be doing data entry at $125 an hour.
Right. I mean, it's a great way to think about it. And when we have these executives and principals who are trying to, micromanage and do their own stuff, their own
And
correspondence,
their
and
time
their
is
own
worth thousands an hour.
Yes, it is not the best use of their time. But a CEO actually got honest with me one day. I said, "Why do you do that? Why are you using your time in that way?" And he actually said to me, "Because their work is easier than mine."
The truth comes out.
It does.
Bum, bum, bum.
To do an assistant's work is way easier, but an assistant isn't getting paid the money they're getting paid. So I'm a big fan of allowing assistants to do the work that they're uniquely qualified to do. There's some amazing people doing this work. I continue to be so impressed, but I'm so clear that training is making all the difference between the good ones and extraordinary assistants and, ongoing employment. The whole workplace is shifting. It's such an exciting time right now, but I know you see that for yourself.
Yeah. So why was it, coming back into the New York Celebrity Assistants, and then there's another one, the Association of Celebrity Personal Assistants. So what was your affiliation with that one?
Yeah. So the Los Angeles group began first. We began in 1996. They began in 1991. So they were the first celebrity assistant organization, which makes sense. They were out in Hollywood, and the profile of those assistants really tend to be very entertainment oriented. And two of the people involved in the Los Angeles group helped Morgan Freeman get New York up and running. But then once we started, very quickly, New York is, you probably know this, very different than Los Angeles.
Yeah, a little bit of a different attitude.
Yeah, a very different attitude. The attitude towards assistants is very different in New York, and the profile of our members were very different. We had assistants to sports people and philanthropists, and the flavor of celebrity in New York is very different than in Los Angeles. So, and then there's also a group in London now, which started after New York. So in the world, there are 3 celebrity assistant groups, and I'm privileged to know these people. Frankly, each assistant is so resourceful and bright in their own right, but put them together with some other assistants, holy cow. The mind boggles. There's nobody they can't get to.
Right.
Nobody.
Right. I'm just amazed when you think about the possibilities with that.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then really important, such an important resource. None of these organizations will live if they're not relevant, if they're not serving a purpose. And my goodness, with New York Celebrity Assistants, dues are only $150 a year. I mean, it's ridiculously low for that kind of access.
Yeah.
That access is worth everything. It was the single most important resource I had in my work, and I've had my measure of success in large part because of them.
Well, that's great. Now, one thing I think it's important to note too, because sometimes I hear people complaining, and they're saying, well, I don't want to send my people to these things because they're just going to be telling horror stories, and they're just there to bitch about me, and it's all spreading gossip and rumors and lies, and it's not.
Absolutely not.
There might be a little bit of venting about the job because it's finally getting around people who understand the nature of the work and the confidentiality, but it's really about sharing information in a network.
Absolutely, it is. It's a resource. We definitely had A-list celebrities and B-list and C-list who did not permit their assistant to join us. Their loss, really. There are many more celebrities who very quickly saw the value. Olympia caught on immediately about the value. She knew that I was resourceful, but her mind really went to that there was no danger of me, talking out of school with her, that I valued. If you're a professional, you know that discretion and confidentiality is paramount. So she really understood the value of belonging to an organization like New York celebrity assistants, and often said, why don't you call your group? Why don't you call somebody in your group and see if we can find that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right. So you mentioned, your book is out there, Be the Ultimate Assistant. And so it was the second edition came out in 2009, which is actually when you and I met.
Yeah.
And now you're doing workshops and trainings all over the world. So tell me more about the classes you're doing.
Well, now the book is in its 5th edition. And
My God, I'm behind the times.
And selling, and still selling well. I'm always delighted when I run into assistants at conferences and they want me to sign their book, and it's all like, it's got Post-it notes all over it, and it's all marked up, and they tell me they keep it on their desk, and I just love that. That's the best compliment ever. The reason I wrote it was, frankly, Donna, I don't want what I know to die with me. That I worked really hard to get this information, and these are not the kinds of things that are ever in a manual or an employee handbook. They just don't exist. The chapter on gender in the workplace, assistants are 95 to 98% female. And I've been, making it my business to connect with experts and leaders and to understand what's going on in the global workplace regarding workplace bullying and the wage gap. So many assistants are pitifully, severely underpaid. That really bothers me. The abuse, the humiliation, the bullying that's going on, and now we've got the Me Too and Time's Up hashtags regarding sexual harassment, which is only one form of workplace bullying. These issues are slowing people down and stopping people dead in their tracks and chasing really good people away. Yeah. It's lose-lose. There's so much money being lost. So, I dreamed up this workshop because this is the workshop, frankly, that I wished had existed when I was working with Olympia.
Yeah.
I envisioned myself in your seat. I know, and I'm so grateful you came to one of our classes, that I imagined myself in your chair. And what is it that I would need to know? That's why it has to deal with soft skills of relationships and communication and solving different problem-solving techniques and lots and lots about communication, dealing with difficult people.
And what's funny is, with my background in HR, it's like I advise my clients all the time on the resume, we have to put that stupid keyword in there, excellent communication skills, because HR keeps putting it on the job description. Yeah. Even though the phrase now means nothing. But why do we keep putting it on there? Do you know that is the number one requested thing from managers? They go, I need somebody who can communicate. And what they specifically mean is somebody who knows how to write and answer emails, pick up the phone, talk to me, have good grammar and writing skills and stuff like that. And they're trying to say that to HR, and HR goes, oh, that's excellent communication skills. So there's that stupid keyword coming right back into the job description, and now the computers are looking for that in the screening, because they're not intelligent enough to look for the context of the way things are being written. And then, so we're hiring people and not looking at that in the resumes, and then they get in the job and the boss starts tearing out his or her hair again, going, this person can't respond to my damn emails.
Well, that's
because
why
it's the communication standards are not there, and then these assistants, who tend to be younger people, have never been taught how to communicate with people, and it's the failure and the disconnect. And then, I mean, I had an assistant who failed, and the problem was the communication.
I'm a big fan of working interviews, to bring somebody in for a half day on another day and actually have them work, actually have them do stuff, have them write, give them actual things that are being needed. I need a response to this. I'm going to dictate the note, and you type it up and show it to me. Let me see how it's going to look. That way you can see spelling errors, grammar errors. Do they have the ability to think on their feet, to be able to communicate the idea of what the principal is wanting to say? That is, these assistants and private service people, they they all say they want to make six figures, right? They all want to make big money, and I want them to make big money.
Yeah.
But if they're going to make big money, they have to bring the skills to the table.
Yes,
they have to bring
do.
the goods to the table. I knew that working with Olympia, I was representing her. So my writing had to represent her voice. These weren't letters that I necessarily would write, but she was in charge. So, what was clear to me and what I teach is that assistants are there to serve the principal's life. Certainly, there's a very big difference between demanding and difficult, which we all understand, and it's part of the gig, because you got to know if someone's an Academy Award winner, if someone is superior, if they're a celebrity, then they're excellent at something, right?
Right.
Whether they're a baseball player or whatever they are, they're also chances are a perfectionist in other areas of their lives. But there's a big difference between demanding and perfectionist and difficult versus demeaning and humiliating and abusive.
Yes.
For me, there is a big line between those things, and the second half is not acceptable under any circumstances. That I train our BTUA students to not reward bad behavior, that it is not, there are things that we can do right from the first interview to set the expectation to have a culture of respect. Because what I've seen in my career, which is pretty long now, if we have a culture of respect, everything becomes possible. The converse is also true. If there is disrespect, it's a formula for failure. It's a setup for failure, and there's going to be not real blood, but it's going to be messy, and it's going to be ugly, and it's unnecessary, I think.
And one of the things too, I mean, we're having historic low unemployment in the United States right now, and I'm involved with several HR groups up in Colorado, and that discussion has been coming up of like, how do we make a real culture? How do we really be inclusive, and looking at the cost of a negative culture and bullies in the workplace, like you address, because if you scare the good employees away, there's not a lineup of another 100 people dying for the job like there was, back in the recession.
Yeah, and plus I think
that talent pool has flipped.
And there is a reality among millennials, or among younger assistants and younger PSPs, and that is that they aren't ready for a 50, 60, 70-hour work week. They're not sitting for it anymore. They want a work-life balance. They want to be able to go leave at 4 o'clock and go play their baseball game or whatever. And I'm not sure, Donna, they're wrong about that.
Yeah, it's the work-life blend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, let me leave at 4 so I can go to my kid's soccer game, but I'm going to, at home, I'm going to work from 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Is that I would say, and one of the things I definitely wanted to talk to you about too was how these roles of the PA or the executive PA has been evolving over the years. Yeah, and I'd say they always were heavy on the work-life blend, right?
Actually, no.
Really?
Yeah. In my travels in these 14 countries where I've been, America is the envy of the world, except in 2 topic areas. The first is that the rest of the world thinks we're crazy workaholics.
I can see that.
And we are.
Yeah.
We absolutely are. We have assistants who tell me they haven't taken a vacation in 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
We're not, from where I sit, we're not doing a great job at work-life balance. And then the second topic area where we get a lot of criticism as Americans is the parental leave policies that we have here in the United States. It totally does. It's very bad. And I don't think they're wrong about that. I see that assistants are integral in taking a proactive point of view on the issues of, say, backup for vacations. That leaders are not paying attention to what is it going to take for an assistant to go on a vacation to actually unplug? Because we have assistants, if they finally do go on vacation, they're checking emails all the time. They're essentially working.
Yeah.
They're at work. leaders aren't doing that. Leaders have the ability to unplug when they go on vacation because their assistant has their back.
Yeah.
Their assistant is covering for them. But leaders are not paying attention to this, conversely. HR is definitely not paying attention to this issue. So I'm putting it squarely back in the laps of the assistants to take the bull by the horns and to come up with a plan. Mm-hmm. To come up with a plan that makes sense for them to actually have a work-life blend that is reasonable. I train assistants to be the CEO of You Incorporated, to treat your career as the business that it is. It's a business. You're a business. And it's, yes, we should love our work. You know, we have assistants and PSPs who say, I love my work. And somehow that becomes justification for tolerating bad behavior and tolerating lower salaries. Like, no. Yes, you should love your work, but you also should be paid what you're worth. And you also should have the ability to take your family on vacation and to enjoy yourself, and, by the way, have enough money to save for retirement. That is not unreasonable, but we're still in a place in 2018 where a lot of this is novelty and still too new an idea. But everywhere I go, I see that assistants are getting it. They understand that there's nobody advocating for them, and so they need to be their own advocate. Yeah. And they're bright enough, they can certainly do it, and they are doing it, and that's super exciting to watch.
That is. All right, so as we kind of wrap up some things, I know that you're saying people are taking control of their careers and things like this. When it comes to managing conflict and dealing with these workplace bullies, what are some of the strategies that you have in dealing with that situation?
Yeah. Well, the bad news is that this thing is a global epidemic. Oh. That's how I view it. It's a strong phrase. In part, it's due to the fact that leaders go to business school and they do not take classes. They don't even have classes in business school that remotely resemble a title called How to Manage Humans. So we have a world of leaders and managers out there who might be great lawyers, they might be great accountants, they might be great at what they do, but that does not equate with being a good manager of people. And so somehow leaders have gotten the message that the best way to get great work out of somebody is to intimidate them, and to yell at them and humiliate them and to ostracize them. And it's a duh for us, but it's causing a lot of pain and trauma in the workplace. Again, if assistants are going to, and staff are going to treat themselves as the CEO of You Incorporated, you get to decide what you're going to take. And the ace in the hole for so many staff is that leaders don't want to lose you. That I think a staff has much more leverage than they actually know that they have. And therefore, I teach that, and I've studied this. There's a great book called Taming the Abrasive Manager, Dr. Laura Crawshaw. She's a colleague of mine, and I've made it my business to learn and educate myself about this issue because it is causing so much pain and suffering around the world. And honestly, Donna, there's not a conference I go to that assistants don't pretty quickly start talking about this subject. That it is the thing that's chasing people away, and when they choose to quit, they're going to work for the competition. Like it's not helping the principals or the CEOs. So it's very powerful to, when someone says something that's offensive, to get them alone, look them straight in the eye, and very calmly say, I need to talk to you about what just happened in the meeting. No one in my life talks to me like that. It is not productive for us to communicate in that way, and I need to talk with you about how we're going to communicate going forward, because that's not working.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, it's to the point. It's not blaming.
Yep.
It's setting a boundary.
That's right.
And it's firm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's got to be calm, clear, direct, specific. It isn't. We can't use phrases like "you always treat me bad" or "you never." You
never listen to me.
Right, like little kids. This has to be professional and respectful. In our workplace, we're living in a time where rudeness has become very in vogue, and in part, I think that's due to social media and technology. In that, it's very easy to hit send when you don't have to look into somebody's eyes and to, send what I term as a nastygram or something like that. On my website, there are plenty of resources for this kind of thing, because part of the problem is that staff doesn't have the words to say. What I try to do is help my students know the words that you can actually say to a manager who's been so demeaning and humiliating. Something like, Joe, you might not realize that this happened, but you need to know I'm deeply offended by what you just said to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can cut them a break and try to let them off the hook a little bit. Mm-hmm. You might not know this. Some assistants use humor, saying like, you didn't really just say that to me. Mm-hmm. The spectrum goes all the way to, this is beginning to feel like a hostile work environment. I think we need to do something about this. Yeah. I care about working here. I like working with you most of the time. Classic bully behavior, Donna, is that first of all, when a bully is bullying one person, chances are they're bullying more than one person.
Right.
Secondly, when a bully is confronted directly and told something like, I am offended by what you just said, and you will not say that to me again, most bullies will hear it and move on to somebody else.
Yeah.
That's typical.
Yeah.
So we, as leaders and as staff in the workplace, frankly, in the light of this whole Me Too Time's Up movement, there's never been a better time for staff to bring these problematic issues to the attention of our leaders, mainly because it's front page news, and because, it also is front page news that there are, $20 million settlements being brought and won. Mm-hmm. This used to be a subject that was so covered with shame and darkness and silence and discomfort. I'm a big fan of saying, you know what, folks, we need to shine a light on this thing so that we can really tackle it and break the cycle. We need to break the silence and we need to break the cycle so that we can stop this already. I mean, you're a parent, I'm a parent. I don't want this to be the case for my children or my grandkids or the staff coming up behind us. Like, right. Isn't it finally time? It seems to me that, before I'm done, I feel very strongly, and you can probably hear this, I feel like we need collectively as a profession to take a run at this workplace bullying issue, and I also think we need to make it a better environment for women, especially, to be making the money that they deserve.
Yeah. Cool. All right, well, we've come to one of my favorite parts of the show where we get to talk about the tattoo today of the day.
Yeah.
But Bonnie, you don't have a tattoo.
I know. I didn't know if that was going to disqualify me.
I can draw one on you right now. I got a pen.
I don't have anything against tattoos. I know that. Should I tell you what I think? About. I mean,
sure. And one of the things too that I've talked about on the show before is there's something out there called the ink ceiling. I invented the term. So an ink ceiling is where you're allowed to only get so far in your career because of your tattoos are holding you back. Oh. And we're seeing it to be less and less of an issue, but in some industries it matters a heck of a lot more. And in private service, it tends to fall in some of the most conservative lines when it comes to body art, no matter where you are. I was even working on a gentleman's resume. He's a yacht captain. and he's doing some transition to get into like an estate management role on the land. And prominent in the first bits of his contact information on his CV lists no tattoos. And it doesn't matter if you're working for Slash, who has more tattoos than God or whoever. When it comes to like the people who are representing him, looking after their estate or managing their personal affairs or their personal assistant, they tend to want to have a little bit more of a clean-cut look. Is that what you're seeing as well? Or is it more inclusive? Has it gotten more inclusive?
I see that it's being very inclusive.
That's good.
Many of my students have tattoos, and there's not the taboo about it as it was, say, 10 years ago. I see that. I mean, for myself, it's a very personal choice, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a very individual thing. And I shared with you, Donna, that my way of declaring my individuality and to tattoo myself is with my writing. Yeah. If we're trying to leave something behind or have something that's permanent, a permanent representation of me, the way I choose to do it is through my writing. Mm-hmm. And so my hope is that my book and my articles are going to live on beyond me. So I never asked you, like what your personal feelings are about your own tattoos, and like, are you getting new ones, and what your point of view is on it. I'll
tell you this, because I'm Gen X, and I'm pretty heavily tattooed, but it's only in the past year that I have some tattoos on my lower legs, and I finally got one on my left leg, and I'm like, yep, I'm committed now, because before they were all very easily covered up, even though I have a lot. I have 9 very large pieces. And
do people ask you about them?
Now they do. But remember, because I'm Gen X, and when I first started getting my ink, I was very conscious of, I want to express myself, but I'm going to get them in spots that can cover me up, even because I don't want to sink my chances in business.
Right.
And I worked at a radio station.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing. We don't know what orientation or, everybody comes to the table and gets to be an adult with their own history, their own mythology from their families. So I'm a fan of breaking down barriers between people. And I can imagine that sometimes tattoos can put up a barrier. Yeah. They can put up a limitation between people and cause someone to make a judgment that may be unfair.
Yeah, because we are being judged by the way we look, whether we don't want to admit that or not.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, there's such a double standard between men and women.
Oh yeah.
I see that everywhere I go, whether I'm tattooed or not. Mm-hmm. I know that I'm being judged more harshly. And I've just written an article about how women behave with each other, and I'm kind of obsessed with that idea.
Do you want to hear a story about the worst bully I ever worked for in one of my tattoos?
Okay, go ahead.
So, the bully I used to work for is actually pretty famous for being a bully.
As in, it's a famous person?
As in, she thinks she's a famous person.
Okay. Would I know who this person is?
Yes, you would, actually.
All right.
So she was a rather abrasive person, and I worked at her organization for a couple of years, and I had less trouble dealing with her bulliness because when I worked in the entertainment field and like as a producer, my specialty was I worked with difficult artists. So you could yell and scream and curse and whatever at me, I didn't care, because my talent was I pay attention, what's the message underneath what you're saying. It's like you may be throwing something, but the real message is you're mad because we missed a spot, meaning like a spot on air, we blew a bit. And it's like I could throw away all the incidentals of stuff flying around the room and concentrate on what's the communication underneath.
Right.
So I have really thick skin when it came to working with bullies. It was like my talent. And so I worked.
Did you always have a thick skin?
Yeah.
From the time you were young?
Well, I was horribly bullied as a kid, and that's probably where I developed the talent.
Oh, okay.
I'm
sorry.
It's okay. I survived. But So I was working with this gal, and I have a really big tattoo on my arm. I'll show it to you. So it's like a gigantic bear paw, right? And it's a cover-up, so it's all this blackness here is the tattoo that was underneath it. So I had this done to commemorate my marriage with my second husband, and he's since passed away. So this tattoo means a lot. It's not the prettiest piece of art in the world, but
it means something to you.
It means the world to me. And so I would wear shorter sleeves like this during the summer because it got real hot at the mansion. And, she came up to me one day and she goes, "Oh, I hate that tattoo. It's like just a gigantic bruise on your arm. You have to cover it whenever you're here." And it hurt probably more than anything she ever said to me. And it was the way she said it. It was such a verbal attack. And she never bothered to ask what it meant or why it was there. It was this, "I find the way you look unacceptable." And it hurt.
And so what'd you do? How long did you last?
I was still probably there another 6 months after that.
But prior to that comment, you were planning on staying longer?
I probably would have. And the thing, what you were saying
See, that's
about
the
bullies,
point.
with bullies bullying more than one person, it's like, yeah, I could put up with it, but the real reason I left was I couldn't stand to watch her do it to anybody else.
Right. The data shows that the witnesses to bullying bear almost as much of the pain of it as the target themselves.
Yeah.
So and I'm sorry that happened. Wow. I've heard a version of that story 1,000 times where you're unfairly judged on something, it's an unreasonable comment, it's a hurtful thing, and she didn't even take the time to find out more about it. If she delivered it in another way, if you had an expectation that when you come to work in our employ, all tattoos will be covered.
Yeah.
And then you have a choice, right?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I was already wearing suits every day. It was just summer, and I was wearing a shorter sleeve suit jacket.
And so if she had approached that in a different way, you might have... So she lost a great employee 6 months after she said that, and I'm betting you that in those 6 months, you really were not putting 100% into it.
Yeah.
Would that be right?
Yeah. There were some other things going on too, but that was definitely an underlying current.
In October, I'm speaking at my very first HR conference, and so I get an opportunity to be in a room of human resources professionals, and I'm really excited to have a conversation about what is going on in our workplace. How can we reduce and eliminate these problems that are chasing really good people away and in the process traumatizing them? Because there's a phenomenon called presenteeism. We all know what absenteeism is, when you call in sick.
Yeah.
Presenteeism is what happened in that 6 months, Donna. That you were in your chair. Oh, you were there, but you weren't really there. You were doing the bare minimum, right?
Or searching for a job while I'm there at work.
Yes.
Yes.
We only have so much brain space, head space, and happy, engaged employees who feel respected and valued and that they belong will lay in front of a truck for an employer.
Yeah.
And those who feel disrespected as you did and unwitnessed and embarrassed and humiliated and whatever those feelings are, they were the catalyst to have you looking for more work. And so it's a lose-lose for the principal.
Yeah.
A lose-lose. And I'll bet she was surprised when you gave notice.
Yes, she was.
She was, right?
Yep.
So there's a cluelessness. We're really, I wish business schools would handle this differently, and it's beginning to change very slowly. But again, I'm putting this squarely in the laps of the assistants. If managers and leaders are not getting the training on how to manage them, then the assistants have to manage their leaders and managers. I am teaching them to see the gaps, see the places that need improvement, and understand that their leaders are lacking education, and so they can be integral in solving some of these problems. If they understand that there's a revolving door in marketing, they can call that to their leaders' attention. that's smart to do. And what's so gratifying, Donna, is that this is happening, that the assistants of the world are wrapping their heads around the idea that we already know that they see and hear everything, right?
Right.
They see and hear everything, and so now the time has come. I'm teaching them the right way, the respectful way, the professional way to say what they see, to put it in writing what they're seeing, in order to solve the real problems, the burning issues that are happening in our workplace that are costing a lot of money and also eating people alive from the inside out. You know, like the trauma, you will never forget that story, right? How many years ago did that happen, ish?
12. 11.
You know,
11,
when
12,
I ask audiences all over the world, doesn't matter where I ask them, I say, so you've been bullied. Does the trauma of it last only the day it happens, or the week it happens, or the month it happens? And they scream back at me. They say, forever. It lasts forever. It lasts for years. Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would. Even after I left, I would get phone calls from her, and I'd see that phone number pop up on my cell phone.
And what would happen to you?
Oh my God, the anxiety level would increase. My heart would race. I would feel sick, and it'd be like, oh my God, why is she calling? I left a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, the price we're paying is so high. Mm-hmm. I see it. Assistants come to me for help. They're eating too much, they're drinking too much, they're drugging too much. Some have landed in the hospital with nervous breakdowns. Mm-hmm. It's not worth it. And they're underpaid to boot.
Yeah.
There's, you know, we've been talking about issues, you know, I am, given all of this, I'm really optimistic about what's going on in the workplace. We definitely have room for improvement, though. And really, America, despite these issues, we are doing it much better than other countries are, believe it or not. I mean, the assistance in places like the Middle East and Africa and South America and Italy are horrendous. Mm-hmm. Just horrendous, especially for women, the situation with women in those places. And it's even worse for women of color. So, you know, that's a whole other podcast. Right. But we've got work to do. The good news is that the assistants of the world, who I'm getting a hold of anyway, they're wrapping their heads around this stuff and taking action, and it's working. It's working. HR wants to know. Their leaders want to know, and that's really cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Bonnie. So once again, my guest today has been Bonnie Low-Kramen. Bonnie, why don't you give us some of your contact information? How can people get in touch with you and find out about your classes?
Yes, please. Please go to betheultimateassistant.com or BonnieLowKramen.com, and you will find tons of resources on my website, including the workshops page. I mean, it's been exciting. This is our 7th year for Vicki Evans and myself. Vicki is just the best technology trainer out there. She teaches 3.5 hours of Microsoft Office at our workshop, and we just love to have you involved. We're selling out 3-4 months ahead, which is, you know, it's wonderful, but it's also, Donna, speaking to how hungry the assistants of the world are for this information. Assistants come to us from all over the world. Mm-hmm. They travel, they fly all night, and they instinctively know that this training is necessary. So I'd love to hear from you. You know, we're in this thing together. I can't do this alone. The quote I love is that the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. Oh. So, yeah, let me help you with your why, and let us do this better, faster, easier, and happier. Life is so short, isn't it, Donna?
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Bonnie. So my producer keeps reminding me I got to tell people, follow us on all your podcast platforms.
Yes, follow Donna. She's awesome.
Give us a follow, give us a like, make us a comment, unless it's a bullying comment. Be nice. Just be nice. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.